بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, our respected viewers. Once again, we welcome you to another edition of our series on the position of Western education in Islam, which we title Western Education, Obligation or Prohibition, or as it popularly known is Boko Haram. In this series, I have two of our facilitators, Sheikh Abu Hanifa Jibril, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
And with him is Amir Abdullah Hilamidu, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Now, in continuation of our discussion where we are clarifying, responding to and refuting some of the arguments and assertions of the proponents of the ideology of why Boko is haram, we'll be answering some questions today also. Some educational institutions offer courses like fine arts, where they draw animate creatures, which is on Islamic music, atheistic or secular philosophy, sex education for the unmarried, and things like common law, which is contrary to Islamic law, and a number of these things that are taught in these conventional schools.
No.
In spite of all of this, is it permissible for Muslims to enroll in such courses or to attend such institutions? Sheikh Abu Hanifa.
Brothers and sisters in Islam, assalamu alaikum. As we've mentioned times without number, that it's halal, it's permissible to learn all forms of education. Learning is different from, practicing it.
Yes.
And, Hudhayfa bin Yaman, the companion of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, said, the companions used to ask the Prophet on things that are beneficial, knowledge. And I used to ask him on, the contrary, for fear that I might befall it on it. That is, I should know what is harmful so that I prevent myself from, falling into it. So learning all this may not necessarily mean believing in all this, on Islamic education. And it's important that we learn these, subjects, and then we perfect in knowing them so that we bring changes. You cannot change something that you do not know. You need to know in depth on what it contains, such that you can, affect positive change that is in conformity with Islam. And there is a popular, dua that scholars used to make, that Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah. Oh Allah, show us or let us learn and understand the truth, and then, embolden us, empower us to follow what is the truth. وَأَرِنَا الْبَاطِلَ بَاطِلًا وَارْزُقْنَا اجْتِنَابَهُ. And then also, Allah, help us to understand the wrong, and then let us know it's wrong, such that you also help us to avoid it. So you see, if you do not know what is wrong, you cannot avoid it, outrightly. You might even think you are doing service to Islam. So it's necessary that we learn all fields of knowledge. We learn the beneficial and the other. Then that is how we guide, ourselves and others to the truth. And knowing these things and, in depth will help us also to give a positive impact in the curriculum. How you set the curriculum, you should know that this is, detrimental to our faith or otherwise. So you see, partaking in all this will be at the tail end, a plus and a positive, impact to Muslims and Islam, inshallah.
All right. So what you are saying is we can learn them, but be proactive, and it's through learning them that we know what to avoid.
Yes.
And like I used to say, sometimes the people that design these curricula are not Muslims. They don't know our sensitivities and those things that are not in line with our ethics. It's when we go in that we educate them and tell them that this and this we are not okay with.
Yes.
Or better, we can learn them and adapt them to what suits us. Now, more specifically, how Islamically acceptable is it to study courses like common law and philosophy, secular philosophy? When you know philosophy is actually something outside religion, it's more from another perspective anyway. So, like, how Islamically acceptable would it be to study this?
Well, what is important first is haram is haram, halal is halal, but studying haram is not haram. So studying haram is itself ordinarily halal, depending upon the intention and the purpose for which somebody studies that which is haram. That is one important point. The second point is not everything, despite the fact that in other laws that are not necessarily directly Allah's laws, in secular philosophy, despite the fact that there are things that are not, in tandem with the teachings of Islam, but not everything in them is completely bad and evil. And so even for us to know that which is good out of the secular, so that we will see at least we pick that which is correct and good and use it, even for that purpose, we need to go and study it. That is the second point. The third point is, there is another reason why we should go and study it, so that we know what the evil, in order for us to be able to avoid the evil. Alimtu sharra la lisharri lakin litawaqqihi wa man lam ya'rif ash-sharra min al-khayri yaqa' fihi. I try to learn that which is bad and evil, la lisharri, not for me to commit evil, lakin litawaqqihi, but for me to be able to prevent and protect myself from it and avoid it. Because if you don't know that which is bad, then you will not necessarily be able to avoid it. You may be doing something which is bad, not knowing it is bad. So we need to study it at least for these two purposes. But then another reason why we need to study it is for us to be able to replace it with that which is good. Sometimes you study something, it is a solution, because we all know that there is no any disease that Allah revealed without also revealing a cure for it. So if some people have been able to develop something that is bad, we should be able to now study it in order to provide an alternative solution to it. So that is another reason why people should study it. And if you don't have expertise, it is only authorities in law, that those who have studied law very well, that will be able to provide alternative to that law. And that is why you see, even in our contemporary time, you see that those who have contributed most in providing Sharia compliant, constitutions in Muslim countries are those who took their time to study the common law and then use the good aspect of, how to construct a constitution, and then they come and establish an Islamic constitution. Scholars, for example, like Professor Muhammad Hashim Kamali, who is a renowned scholar of Islamic of Sharia in the world, is a scholar who studied in the West how the Western laws operate, and then he was invited in different Muslim countries to come and develop a constitution that is in tandem with the Sharia. So they developed that of his country, Afghanistan, and other parts of the world. And this is what we see in Islamic history. Muslim scholars studying Greek philosophy. Muslim scholars studying other philosophies, other laws. And then after mastering them, they are able now to change them. Imam al-Ghazali will go and study philosophy and become expert in philosophy. And after studying that, he is now equipped by understanding it to use his own Sharia knowledge to write a rejoinder to the wrong notions in philosophy, and then correct the things that require to be corrected. Scholars like Imam Ibn Taymiyyah will study philosophy. Those who say don't study philosophy know very well that Imam Ibn Taymiyyah wrote about philosophy. He didn't write about philosophy until he read that secular philosophy, and then he was able now to correct what is wrong in philosophy. So studying philosophy, mere studying philosophy is not in itself evil. Ibn Taymiyyah was able to write a comprehensive book, Al-Jawab al-Sahih liman baddala din al-Masih, which is a rejoinder to those who do distortions in Christianity. because he was able to first study the books of Christianity. So he took his time to study the books that explain Trinity, sonship of God and so on. Not because he believed in that, but he was able to write, comprehensive, appropriate answer to that because he was able to study it. So studying law in itself is not bad. We need Muslims who will be experts in law. If you come back to countries like ours, for example, if you say nobody should study law, we allow others. So the judges who make our laws, the experts who make our laws, should be people who don't know our Sharia. When are we going to have people who will stand in defense of the rights of Muslims when we don't have competent Muslim lawyers? When they are amending the constitution, you need experts who know the constitution, who will go and speak all the required language to quote all the required sections of the constitution and prove within the constitution itself that Muslims have the right to practice their own Sharia. That is what we saw in the late 1970s in the Constituent Assembly, when we had Muslim lawyers like Dr. Suleiman Kumo, like Professor Awolu Yadudu, who were Muslim students in the university who studied law and became expert in the common law, and then with their knowledge of the Sharia, they were able now to defend the interests of Islam. So Muslims should go and do that. So studying law is something which Muslims need, so that we have competent Muslim lawyers who can go and defend the interests of Islam for the Muslims.
Thank you very much. And quickly we go to the next question. What about teaching the so-called sex education, particularly to the unmarried? What would be the religious position on that?
Alhamdulillah, as we all know, Islam is a complete way of life. It comprises the religious aspect and the mu'amala aspect, ibadah and i'tiqad, and also the mu'amala. So it's a complete system. So even this sex education is not, a new thing even in Islam. Only that in all, fields of study, you can have abuses. So some would go, extra mile in doing things that are haram. Now in Islam, you see in a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ used to kiss his spouses. Kissing is part of, something to do with sex education. And you see, he even cuddles them, hugs them, sleep, under the same blanket, into the same, and many things. So all these are, in fact, the Islamic way of, telling us how to live with our spouses. As the Prophet ﷺ used to say, you should not, approach your wife just like the donkeys would do. You have to, cuddle her, romance her, kiss her, and all these things. But the way, others, abuse the knowledge, or as is taught conventionally, is sometimes or most often against the Islamic teachings, showing graphics, of nudity, and, even asking students to role play, to just make believe kind of play, before students, or showing videos and so on. All these are, against Islamic teachings. But then, because there are things that are against Islam, does not, negate everything that has to do with, Western education or sending our children there. And besides, not all schools, teach this, sex education. So you can decide to send your children to other schools that do not teach sex education if you do not want that. But then you need to also study what is the curriculum, what is the contents of the subjects there, so that when you know how to effect changes, positive changes. But if you completely disown it or refrain from it, you may not know how to bring the positive change there. So studying it does not mean believing in it. And then it does not mean even teaching it to others. You just, sip it and then find the correct position, and you push it forward. The Prophet ﷺ used to say, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ. How can you effect changes? Either using your hands, فَلَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ. If somebody cannot, use the hands, that is, cannot use his authority or his position, then maybe he speaks out. فَمَنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ. And then the last, part of it is you hate it, you disown it, you refrain from it. If you cannot, effect positive change. وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. So, as a Muslim, to my understanding, Allah knows best, is that you study everything, you take the beneficial knowledge from it, and then you discard the one that is detrimental to your faith and religion. Allah knows best.
Thank you very much. I like the way you start that. Islam has it that the Prophet ﷺ, a reasonable part of his life was reported that is meant for us to emulate.
Yes.
Including how he relates with his wife, romantic life. Secondly, that children can be taught what is appropriate for their age to know. In other words, content that are devoid of, those that are not morally corrupting. Don't have to say they should role play. This one you are teaching them immorality.
Yes.
But there are some basic knowledge they need to know about when a girl starts menstruating, when a boy gets to puberty, and all those things like that, guidelines. Like these things are in line and appropriate dosage for their age. And as Muslims, even if where it is done, that doesn't warrant abandoning or forsaking the whole of education.
Yes.
Because if we don't go in, we don't change that. Like, as I can insist, most of the people that design these things are not Muslims. They don't know our values. It's left for us to go in and take charge and remove what doesn't fit our value. Thank you very much.
MashaAllah.
We still move forward on a very close topic to that. Some have issue with studying fine art because you start learning how to carve and design sculpture or statue of human beings or animate things which Islam frown and discourage, Like, what's Islamic position on studying fine art?
Well, I think to a large extent, a lot of the points made about the previous issues, subjects like sex education, like law, and so on, a large portion of what has been said has taken care of what we should look about. People often confuse, what is clearly prohibited with things, that are in one way or the other connected to prohibited things, which might have some details that we need to understand before concluding a position about it. Nobody has the right to say this is haram or this is halal except Allah. And so you need to be very careful when looking at issues of whether it is haram to do this or halal to do this. Yes, there is no doubt about the fact that shirk related art is prohibited and nobody should go and do it, and there is no case and learning to master it. But fine art is not all about drawing human beings, complete structure of human beings or animate beings and so on and so forth. It's beyond that. And that's why, for example, the Prophet ﷺ allowed Aisha radiallahu anha to use toys, so there is some aspect of it that is allowed in the Sharia. So if someone goes into fine art for the purpose of producing these ones, he's not necessarily doing something that is haram. And also, importantly, is the fact that even animate objects that are incomplete, so remove the head and do the drawing. Scholars have no problem with this. But importantly, for the purpose of teaching, in some cases, illustration, as teaching aid for people to understand in medicine, in biology, in anatomy, you need sometimes to show something that should be drawn. There is no harm about that for this purpose if the Sharia guidelines are respected and obeyed. And we see this in also virtual arts, for marketing purpose. When someone masters art fine art in order to go for virtual arts and, you know, drawing cars, aeroplanes and other things. So you can't just condemn something completely. So if in it there is what is bad and there is what is good, then we condemn that which is bad and then use and promote that which is halal. And so people who will go and and study this area should be taught the Sharia rulings and principles guiding this, and they should go and do it so that they avoid what is against the Sharia and do that which is in line with the teachings of the Sharia. And that is how the scholars of Islam look at all issues related to studying some subjects. Study it, master it, avoid that which is against the Sharia, use that which is in line with the teachings of the Sharia. I think this is what should be said about this. Wallahu a'lam.
Thank you very much. Like all you are saying is it's not everything about it that is bad.
Yeah.
A good number of it are very useful for marketing, signboards, car design,
Yes.
and a number of people who even specialize on those kind of things. And so we should just be ethical.
Yeah.
And as Muslims, learn what are the no-go areas, what are our limitations. But of course, even some that are prohibited, it's not like a general rule. There are exceptions. Learning, teaching, as teaching aids and areas where they are necessary, particularly in medicine. There is virtually no part of human being you can study.
Yes.
In anatomy, to draw, to know how it looks and how it works,
Including
including sexual and reproductive organs. In depth. You're not studying that time for vulgarity or no, but like you know now, you want to know. So I think
so that as a means for you to master how to save human life.
I agree. So like I like this elaboration, and I wish people who are having this kind of understanding would have learned. Now we still have one more question before we end the episode. How Islamically acceptable is it to study music when we know that music is a very big industry and a good number of it, of course, maybe not all of it, have some corrupt elements? Like, what's the position of Islam on that?
Music, scholars, categorize music into two. One, they will say music without musical instruments. That is poems, shi'r. And some will say there is also music using musical instruments. So Allah knows best. To my understanding, there is no differences of opinion as regards shi'r. Although Allah is saying, وَالشُّعَرَاءُ يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ. Scholars, accept shi'r, that's music or songs without using musical instruments. It abounds in hadith. Many, some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ used to sing songs.
And provided the meaning
is yes, the contents of the music is halal, encouraging people to go for jihad. No vulgarity. You understand? And is not giving people or human beings the position of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like when you say the Prophet knows what is on scene. And as regards the other side, the use of musical instruments, yes, a lot of scholars say it's haram to use musical instruments, but you may have a few that say no, it depends on the kind of instruments used. If it were instruments that do not encourage like vulgarism, as I've said, or something, or stealing, some kind of music, whenever they perform, there is going to be a lot of stealing in that community. And some encourage, fornication. You understand? There are musicians that when they come there, a lot of immoral things
they
happen.
are sexually suggestive.
Yes, suggestive. Very good. So if all the music is devoid of all these things, some look the other way around and then allow it. As Sufyan al-Thawri may say, whenever you see people doing things that have difference of opinion of scholars and to which you believe it's haram, you do not prevent them from doing it. That is, since there is a little room for others to say or do otherwise, you look the other way. So to my understanding, music being taught in conventional schools is not a strong evidence, it's not a strong reason, to prevent our, children from going to conventional schools and learning conventional subjects.
Thank you very much. Like you say, number one, not all schools teach it. Number two, scholars agree that songs ordinarily, as long as the message is halal, is not promoting crime or sex or vulgarity, or elevating somebody to God and all those kind of excessive things.
Yes.
That's fine. Then the second issue is whether they should be accompanied by instrument or not. And that's why you have differing opinion.
Yes.
And like just the message, the content of the song, even the sound of the instruments too vary. There are those that are extreme, these ones they are not mild. They are for the hard guys. It doesn't befit any gentleman. And there are those that maybe they accompany some songs in teaching children nursery rhymes and some of those mild things. So it's left for Muslims to really look into and see what suits them. Thank you very much.
Some scholars may also say, music, why they prohibit, musical instruments is that music, shakes, or what shall I say, the heart and make people restless.
Okay.
While Quran makes the hearts. So you see, so they are almost direct opposite.
Okay, in other words, Muslims, if they want to take, it gets any sort of calmness.
Yes, read the Quran or listen.
Melodious voice.
Yes.
Suffice.
So it's the best alternative to listening to music.
MashaAllah.
Allah knows best.
Thank you very much. But all we are saying, there's always some good in the bad. And it's not a general rule. There are some areas that can be permitted because of their benefits. Okay, and there are areas of unanimity among scholars, and there are gray areas. But all in all, that's still not sufficient enough for us to say we discard the whole system just because of something that is very, very infinitesimal.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your contribution on this subject. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase you in knowledge.
Ameen.
Our viewers, we come to the end of this program today. Here, see you in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum.